Good morning, class. I am back for part 2 of our lesson, The History of Voting Rights. Yesterday we left off having just read a timeline of voting in America, and that is also the name of the assignment on Google Classroom. So please make sure to pull up this assignment just like yesterday in order to pick up where we left off. Let's scroll to page 3. On this page, you should have your answer to the prompt, which asked, what is the main idea of the information contained on this timeline? For example, what seems to be one big idea you can take away from the information on the timeline? I read some really great answers from many of you. For example, one student said that what they realized is that it took quite a long time until everyone in this country could vote. Quite a long time. And in fact, one student even did some math and named that it took almost 200 years until everyone in the country had the right to vote. So those were really great observations, and I was really excited to see those answers on page 3. Today, I want to remind us of our learning targets. So the learning target for part 1 and part 2 and the whole lesson really in general is that I can explain how the right to vote has changed throughout American history. Okay, so that is what you should be able to know or do by the end of this week's learning. Now, today we're also going to be looking at the vocabulary in the timeline because there were some, more difficult words. Specifically, we're going to discuss how we can determine the meaning of words that are unfamiliar to us. So your learning target, I added one today. We now have a second learning target for today's lesson, and that's I can determine the meaning of unfamiliar words using a variety of strategies. Let's start today by thinking about how sometimes words that we know can have different meanings depending on how they're used, right? Let's start with the word bat. We've all probably used this word before or have at least one idea of what this word means. Some of you might be thinking about a baseball bat, right? That you could hit a baseball with. Bat. That's totally fair. That is what this word means. Some of you might also realize, that word could also be the mammal that sleeps upside down, a bat. And you're exactly right as well. Isn't it funny how a simple word like bat can have multiple meanings depending on how it's used? Let's think about another word. How about the word bar? This word has a lot of meanings. Think to yourself, what are some word meanings of this word bar? Some of you might be thinking, oh my gosh, a candy bar, chocolate bar. Yes, me too. I do love a chocolate bar. That's exactly right. That's one way we can use the word bar. Maybe some of you are also thinking a bar graph. We've talked about these in math, right? A bar graph. Absolutely. That's one of the words. That's one of the meanings of the word bar. Others of you missing the playground at school might be thinking the monkey bars, a bar on the monkey bars. Sure. Take a look. So far, there are at least 3 different ways that we can use the word bar, and it's such a simple and small, short word, but it still has many different meanings. Let's turn to our timeline assignment. You should have this pulled up in front of you if possible. Please find the entry for 1787. It's about on the middle of the first page, 1787. Just to make things easier for our lesson, I've printed it out so that we can take a look. We're going to reread this entry for 1787. The U.S. Constitution is ratified. It gives each state the right to determine the qualifications for voting. Most states restrict voting to male property holders over age 21. Some states bar free African Americans from voting. Ooh. There's that word bar. We just came up with 3 definitions for this word. Let's see if any of these meanings make sense in this situation or this context. Some states chocolate bar free African Americans from voting. That doesn't make sense. Let's try the next one. Some states bar graph free African Americans from voting. No. Some states monkey bar free African Americans from voting. That doesn't make sense either. So how can we figure out what this word might mean? Let's reread the entry and try and think to ourselves, given this situation, given this context, what could this word mean? Most states restrict voting to male property holders over age 21. Some states bar free African Americans from voting. Think to yourself for a moment, what could the word bar mean in this situation? Because we know it's not any of these meanings. Take a second. Based on the situation or the context, you're probably realizing that the meaning of the word bar here means that they didn't allow or that they even stopped some free African Americans from voting. That makes sense that they stopped them, that this word means that they did not approve or didn't allow. So what I want you to learn from this lesson is that using the situation or the context of a situation can help you understand or figure out the meaning of an unfamiliar word. And when you come across a word that you haven't seen before, or that a word that might use a different meaning, even if you have seen it before, you should ask yourself, do I understand the word or phrase that I just read? Or does it make sense to me in this situation? If the answer to either of those questions is no, you need to choose a strategy to help you figure it out. Let's review some of the strategies for determining word meaning that we've discussed as a class before. Determining word meaning. So the first thing you can do, and what we just did to figure out what this word bar means, is read the whole paragraph and make a guess based on the context, which is like the situation. Check, we just did that. Let's say that doesn't work. Here are some other things that you can do. First, look in the glossary, if there is one, or look for a text feature, like an image or a graph, that defines the word. Or look in a dictionary, if you have one, or think about the parts of the word that you already know. For example, we did that with the word timeline in yesterday's lesson. We know the word time and the word line. Finally, you can discuss the word with another person. Ask someone else if they know that word. Ask what they think it might mean. So these are all strategies that you can use to determine the meaning of unfamiliar words. Today we're going to focus on the second strategy, looking in a glossary. I have great news for you. On page 4, we have a glossary with the meanings of several of the words in the timeline. So let's, all of us, scroll now to page 4 where it says timeline glossary. A glossary, you guys, here's the definition, is a small dictionary found in a text to help the reader understand unknown words. So in case you don't know what a glossary is, there's a definition. And the glossary here has definitions or synonyms of some of the unfamiliar words from the timeline. A synonym, class, is really just any word that has the same or similar meaning. So a definition and a synonym are very similar things. Synonyms have the same meaning as other words. So this page has synonyms and definitions of some of the unfamiliar vocabulary words that are up in the timeline. Okay, let's look back at our entry for 1787 and read it again. You should follow along as I read this out loud. And as I'm reading, I'm going to replace some of the unfamiliar words with words from the glossary. Let's get started. 1787, the US Constitution is ratified. That's an unfamiliar word, and I see the definition or synonym in the glossary. Ratified means approved. So let's reread with our new definition. The US Constitution is approved. It gives each state the right to determine the qualifications for voting. Qualifications, worthiness. Okay, so it gives each state the right to determine the worthiness for voting. Most states restrict voting, limit. Most states limit voting to male property holders over age 21. Some states bar, we've already figured out this word, but it's also in the glossary, bar. They don't allow or prevent. Most states restrict voting. Some states don't allow or prevent free African Americans from voting. Okay. So remember, when you come to an unfamiliar word, these are the steps that you should be taking to determine its meaning. Today we focused on step 2, using a glossary. We just went through and replaced all of the unfamiliar words with words or definitions from the glossary. Your task for today is to go back and reread the timeline, and when you come to an unfamiliar word, use these strategies. Specifically, check if that word is in the glossary to gain a deeper meaning of these entries in the timeline. After that, you'll scroll to the last page where there's 3 questions to answer. In your own words, this is number 1. What happened in 1787? We just reviewed this, and in fact, I've even shown which words you can find in the glossary. In your own words, what happened in 1787? Make sure to include at least 2 definitions from the glossary in your answer. Then number 2, based on what you read in the timeline, what are some ways that voting has changed in America? Make sure to use details from the timeline to support your answer. Finally, number 3, what makes someone a leader of change? How can one person make a difference? This is a bigger idea that we'll be talking about in the next 3 weeks. So I want to see what you already think about leadership and how one person can make a difference. All right, when you've finished all 3 of these questions, you need to press turn in or submit on Google Classroom so that I can grade your work and give you a score and some feedback based on your answers. If you have any questions, just shoot me a text, but I can't wait to see all your hard work on these last 3 questions and to hear about how you've used the glossary to help you understand some of the unfamiliar words in the timeline. Have a great day.